The obsidian fortress loomed against the void of space, its jagged edges absorbing rather than reflecting the light of the distant stars. Colonel Mara Whitlock stood at the command bridge of the USS Vanguard, her eyes fixed on the tactical display as the massive structure grew larger. Behind her, the Interstellar Strike Fleet maintained perfect formation, 12 warships bearing the insignia of Earth's unified command. "Proximity alert, Colonel," reported Lieutenant Keller from the navigation station. "We're approaching the outer defense perimeter of the Deathworld Council's territory." Mara nodded, her expression betraying nothing of the tension that coiled within her. The year 2250 marked humanity's first official diplomatic mission to the Deathworld Council, a coalition of species whose home planets were classified as hostile evolutionary crucibles, species that had survived environments so harsh that most sentient life would perish within hours, species that viewed Earth as a paradise planet, unworthy of respect. "Standard approach vector," she ordered, smoothing down her midnight blue uniform. "Maintain diplomatic protocols. We are guests until proven otherwise." Captain Jonas Drex moved to stand beside her, his weathered face grim. "Colonel, receiving multiple distress signals scattered across the Council's border outposts. They're fragmented, but concerning." Mara's attention snapped to the communications display. Red indicators blinked across multiple sectors, emergency beacons activated by human diplomatic teams stationed at various Council outposts. The pattern was too widespread to be coincidence. "Origin verification," she demanded. "Confirmed," said Communications Officer Walsh. "Signature matches our advanced diplomatic teams, but the messages themselves are corrupted, just fragments of data packets." Mara's mind raced through protocol. They were supposed to announce their arrival, wait for clearance, proceed through designated checkpoints. A careful, plodding process designed to demonstrate humanity's respect for the Council's territorial sovereignty. But those distress beacons changed everything. "New course," she ordered, decision crystallizing in her mind. "Direct approach to the Citadel, maximum speed consistent with defensive readiness." Captain Drex raised an eyebrow. "Colonel, that violates at least 3 sections of the preliminary treaty." "So noted, Captain." Mara's voice was steel. "But those are our people out there. I'm not waiting for bureaucratic permission while they're in danger." The command bridge fell silent as her words registered. Then, with military precision, the crew executed her orders. The Vanguard's engines flared, and the entire fleet accelerated toward the heart of Council territory, the massive fortress city known as the Obsidian Citadel. "Weapon status?" Mara asked. "Defense systems online but passive." Lieutenant Commander Reyes reported from Tactical. "All weapons powered, but secured, as per diplomatic protocols." "Maintain that status," Mara said. "I want us ready, but not provocative." She turned to face the bridge crew. "I need everyone at peak alertness. We don't know what we're flying into, but whatever it is, I intend for us all to fly back out." The journey to the Citadel took 3 hours. 3 hours of mounting tension as more distress signals appeared, then abruptly cut off. 3 hours during which Mara reviewed everything known about the Deathworld Council, an alliance of 7 species, each evolved on planets classified as evolutionary pressure cookers. Their biology, psychology, and social structures had been shaped by constant threats, resource scarcity, and environmental extremes. These were beings who viewed comfort with suspicion and struggle as virtue, who measured worth by survival capacity, who had originally dismissed humans as soft creatures from a gentle world, until humanity's military capabilities had demanded respect. "Deceleration sequence initiated," announced Lieutenant Keller. "Approaching the Citadel." The massive structure filled the view screens now, a sprawling fortress carved from what appeared to be actual obsidian, reinforced with dark metal alloys. No windows softened its imposing exterior. No decorative elements marred its utilitarian design. It was a structure built for one purpose: to endure. "Magnification on the docking bays," Mara ordered. The image shifted, zooming in on the enormous hangars where council ships were berthed. What she saw made her blood run cold. Red smears marked the hull of a human diplomatic vessel. The stains followed a pattern that suggested violence rather than accident. Splash patterns consistent with high-velocity impact. Blood. Deploy scout drones, she ordered. Full sensor sweep of the accessible areas. I want to know what we're dealing with before we dock. Minutes later, the drone footage confirmed her worst fears. More blood, not just on the human ships, but splashed across the docking bay itself and trailing into the station's interior corridors. Most disturbing of all, some of the blood wasn't human. It was something else, something that left residue that seemed to glow faintly under the drone's scanning lights. Colonel, Major Rena Cho spoke up from the science station, her voice carefully controlled. Preliminary analysis suggests some of that biological material isn't from any known council species either. It's something else entirely. Before Mara could respond, the communication system crackled. Incoming transmission from the Citadel, reported Officer Walsh. On screen, Mara ordered, straightening her posture. The view screen flickered, then revealed a humanoid figure with ashen gray skin and deeply sunken eyes. The being wore elaborate armor that seemed to be fused with its body in places, a biomechanical integration characteristic of the Sarnath species. One of the Council's founding members. I am Lord Sarnax, acting overseer of the Deathworld Council, the being announced, its voice a discordant blend of organic and synthetic tones. Your unscheduled approach is noted, Colonel Whitlock. Mara's surprise at being recognized was overshadowed by the creature's appearance. Lord Sarnax looked damaged. Portions of his armor were cracked, and a viscous fluid that might have been his version of blood had dried along one side of his face. Overseer Sarnax, Mara replied with formal correctness. We received multiple distress signals from our diplomatic teams. Our approach is in accordance with emergency protocols established in Section 12 of our preliminary treaty. Sarnax's expression remained unreadable. An unfortunate misunderstanding. Your diplomats are safe. The signals were triggered by a technical malfunction during a ceremonial demonstration. The explanation was too neat, too dismissive of the blood evidence her drones had already documented. Mara chose her next words carefully. Then, you won't object to our docking and verifying their status personally. It wasn't a question, and Sarnax recognized the implied threat. The Deathworld Council might be formidable, but 12 human warships represented enough firepower to cause significant damage, even to the Citadel. Of course, Sarnax said after a moment's hesitation. Docking permissions are granted. You may bring a security detail, as befits your rank. Thank you, Overseer. Mara nodded formally. We'll proceed immediately. The transmission ended, and Mara turned to her senior officers. I need a boarding party. 20 of our best, fully armed but with weapons secured unless I give the order. Major Cho, I want you with us. Your expertise in xenobiology might be crucial. Captain Drex, you'll maintain command of the Vanguard. Drex nodded grimly. Be careful in there, Colonel. Those blood patterns didn't look like any ceremonial demonstration I've ever seen. Agreed. Mara's expression hardened. If we don't report back on schedule, you know the protocols. Scorched earth, Drex confirmed quietly. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. 30 minutes later, Mara led her team through the massive docking bay of the Obsidian Citadel. The space was cavernous, with ceilings that disappeared into shadow high above. The architecture was brutalist, all hard angles and exposed structural elements. Nothing was hidden, nothing was softened. It was the aesthetic of beings who viewed concealment as weakness and comfort as decadence. And everywhere, the blood, dried now, but unmistakable, spatters and smears that told a story of violence. Human blood in some places, the strange luminescent substance in others. The council had made no attempt to clean it away. They were met by a delegation of council representatives, one from each member species. Sarnax stood at their head, his biomechanical armor gleaming dully under the harsh lights. Beside him towered a massive reptilian being with armored plates instead of skin, Ambassador Kreth of the Tauric Dominion. Next came a spindly figure whose body seemed composed of articulated crystalline segments, Envoy Zal of the Silicon Collective. The others were equally alien, equally imposing. But what struck Mara wasn't their alienness. It was their demeanor. They seemed nervous, not afraid exactly, but tense in a way that contradicted their reputation for implacable composure. "Colonel Whitlock," Sarnax said, inclining his head slightly. "Welcome to the Obsidian Citadel." "Thank you, Overseer," Mara replied, matching his formality. "I trust our diplomatic team is ready to meet with us?" "Of course." Sarnax gestured toward a massive doorway. "They await you in the reception hall. But first, perhaps you would care to tour our facilities? The Citadel is the pride of our unified achievement." A delaying tactic, Mara recognized, but one that might give her team more information. "We would be honored," she said. "Lead the way." As they proceeded through the fortress city, Mara maintained a running commentary for the benefit of the recording devices hidden in her uniform. The structure was even more impressive from within, a labyrinth of chambers and corridors that could house thousands. Yet they encountered few other beings, giving the place an abandoned feel that contradicted its purpose as the council's central meeting place. "And this," Sarnax announced, as they approached a massive set of doors, inscribed with symbols from each council species language, "is the Grand Chamber, where the full council convenes." The doors swung open to reveal a circular room of immense proportions. Tiered seating surrounded a central platform where speakers would presumably stand. But what caught Mara's attention was the floor of that platform. It was stained with the same luminescent substance they had seen elsewhere, a large pool of it, partially dried but still faintly glowing. And embedded in the center of that pool were metallic objects that resembled energy anchors, the kind used to secure volatile materials during transport. "An impressive chamber," Mara commented, keeping her tone neutral. "Was this where the ceremonial demonstration took place?" Sarnax's many-jointed fingers twitched slightly. "Yes. The ritual of vitality assessment, a traditional exchange between allied species." "I see." Mara gestured toward the stained floor. "And this substance? It seems to have unusual properties." Major Cho had already discreetly activated her handheld scanner, keeping it partially concealed in the fold of her uniform. "Life essence," Sarnax replied, using a term that the translation software rendered imperfectly. "A biological catalyst that demonstrates evolutionary resilience?" Before Mara could press further, her communications officer touched his earpiece, then leaned close to whisper, "Colonel, urgent message from the data recovery team. They've accessed the local systems and found something you need to see." Mara nodded almost imperceptibly, then addressed Sarnax. "Overseer, while this tour is fascinating, I'm afraid duty compels me to check on our diplomatic team directly." Sarnax's reaction was subtle but unmistakable, a tightening of his posture, a narrowing of those sunken eyes. "Of course, Colonel. They are in the Eastern Wing. I will have escorts take you there." "Thank you, but my team has the location coordinates," Mara replied smoothly. "We can find our way. Please, continue your administrative duties. I understand our arrival has disrupted your schedule." It was a polite dismissal, and Sarnax recognized it as such. After a moment of visible calculation, he inclined his head. "As you wish. We will reconvene for the formal reception in 3 hours." As soon as the council representatives had departed, Mara turned to her communications officer. "What did they find?" Lieutenant Walsh's expression was grim. Data logs from the past 72 hours. Colonel. They show our diplomatic team was separated upon arrival and taken to isolated chambers. Then there's a gap in the footage, after which they appear in what looks like medical bays. The systems were recording physiological data from them. "Are they alive?" Mara demanded. The logs suggest yes, but in some kind of induced stasis. And Colonel, there's something else. The system recorded massive power surges to what's designated as the blood hall. That's when the distress signals were triggered. Mara's decision was immediate. New plan. Half the team with me to locate and extract our people. The other half with Major Cho to investigate this blood hall. Keep communications open and weapons ready. As they split up, Mara led her group through the winding corridors of the eastern wing. The architecture grew increasingly utilitarian, less fortress and more laboratory. Security doors with biometric locks, observation windows with one-way glass, equipment that resembled medical apparatus, but with modifications that suggested purposes beyond healing. They found the first diplomat in a chamber, marked with symbols that translated roughly to Specimen A. The man, Cultural Attaché William Chen, lay on a platform resembling an operating table. He was unconscious, but breathing, with multiple puncture marks visible on his arms and torso. Beside him, diagnostic equipment displayed scrolling data in the Council's unified scientific notation. "Get him stable for transport," Mara ordered, as her medic rushed forward. "And download whatever data you can from that system." They proceeded to find 5 more diplomats in similar conditions, all alive but unconscious, all bearing evidence of extensive sampling. But it was the communications officer who was missing. "Colonel," Walsh said urgently, checking his tablet. "According to the logs, communications officer Lin was taken to the blood hall 8 hours ago." Mara's blood ran cold. "Contact Major Cho, tell her—" Her order was cut short by the sound of an alarm, a wailing, oscillating tone that seemed to vibrate through the very structure of the Citadel. "They've discovered us extracting our people," Lieutenant Commander Reyes said, checking his tactical display. "Security protocols activating throughout the facility." "Accelerate the extraction," Mara ordered. "Get our people back to the shuttle. I'm going to find Major Cho." Following the coordinates transmitted by Cho's team, Mara and 2 security officers raced through increasingly deserted corridors. The alarm continued its eerie wail, but they encountered no resistance, a fact that worried rather than relieved her. The Council should have security forces. Where were they? They found the answer when they reached the blood hall. The massive chamber dwarfed even the grand chamber they had seen earlier. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness high above, and its walls were lined with what could only be described as cells, transparent enclosures containing various life forms. Some were recognizable as belonging to known spacefaring species. Others were entirely alien, creatures of nightmare biology that seemed to exist in defiance of evolutionary logic. In the center of the chamber stood a circular platform surrounded by complex machinery. Tubes and conduits ran from this machinery to the cells, creating a network that resembled a grotesque circulatory system. And standing before this platform, facing off against Major Cho's team, was Lord Sarnax, now flanked by beings unlike any Mara had encountered before. They were tall, easily 8 feet in height, with physiology that seemed to be a horrific blend of insectoid and mammalian features. Their exoskeletons gleamed with a metallic sheen, but patches of dense muscle were visible beneath, pulsing with unnatural strength. Most disturbing were their limbs, which ended not in hands or claws, but in what appeared to be organic tools, biological weapons grown from their own bodies. "Colonel Whitlock," Sarnax called out, his voice amplified by his armor. "You arrived just in time to witness the culmination of our great work." Mara assessed the situation rapidly. Major Cho and her team had taken defensive positions behind equipment stations. They were outnumbered by the strange beings, but had so far avoided direct confrontation. What is this place? Sarnax? Mara demanded, her hand resting on her sidearm. And where is our communications officer? Sarnax gestured toward the platform, where Mara now saw a human figure strapped to what resembled a medical cradle. Communications Officer Lin was conscious, but clearly weakened, with tubes connected to her arms and neck. Your officer is contributing to the advancement of all our species, Sarnax said, his tone almost reverential. The Vitality Exchange is the cornerstone of our alliance with the Zeroth. He indicated the insectoid beings surrounding him. The Zeroth come from beyond even our Deathworlds, from places where life itself seems impossible. They have mastered biological adaptation in ways we can only dream of. And they have offered us a partnership. Major Cho stepped forward, her scanner still active in her hand. Colonel, these readings are incredible. The biological material we've been seeing, it's some kind of hyper-adaptive plasma. It can integrate with and enhance other biological systems. Very good, Major, Sarnax said approvingly. The essence of the Zeroth's gift, and humanity, it seems, produces particularly potent variations of this plasma. Your species' adaptive capacity, hidden beneath your soft exteriors, is remarkable. The pieces clicked into place in Mara's mind with horrifying clarity. You've been harvesting our people's blood, using it to… What? Enhance yourselves? These Zeroth creatures? Not just enhance, Sarnax corrected. Transform, evolve. The ritual of vitality assessment determines which species offer the most valuable biological contributions. Yours has proven exceptional, especially in terms of neural plasticity and immune response. One of the Zeroth stepped forward, its movements unnervingly fluid despite its rigid exoskeleton. When it spoke, the sound was like metal scraping against stone. But the translation came through clearly enough. Your species harbors great strength, hidden beneath weakness. We will extract this strength. We will perfect it. The vessels are irrelevant. Vessels. They were referring to humans as vessels, mere containers for biological material to be harvested. This ends now, Mara declared, drawing her weapon. Release our officer and stand down. Sarnax's expression shifted to something that might have been pity. You misunderstand your position, Colonel. The Zeroth are not enemies to be fought. They are the ultimate survivors, the apex of evolutionary pressure. Their homeworld makes even our Deathworld seem hospitable. They have come to elevate us all. By turning us into blood banks, Mara's voice was ice. I don't think so. She activated her tactical comm unit. Vanguard, this is Colonel Whitlock. Emergency Protocol Sigma. I repeat, Emergency Protocol Sigma. The acknowledgement came immediately. Confirmed, Colonel. Sigma packages deploying in 3 minutes. Sarnax tilted his head. What have you done? Insurance policy, Mara replied. EMP warheads targeted throughout the Citadel. They'll fry every piece of technology in this place, including whatever's keeping those things controlled. It was a calculated bluff. The EMPs would certainly disrupt the Citadel systems, but Mara had no idea if the Zeroth were being controlled or acting independently. Still, the reaction from Sarnax told her she'd struck a nerve. You cannot, he hissed, genuine alarm breaking through his composure. The containment fields. He was interrupted by a sound from above, a scuttling, scratching noise that seemed to come from the darkness of the ceiling. Mara looked up to see hundreds of shapes moving in the shadows, more Zeroth, clinging to the uppermost reaches of the chamber. How many of these things did you bring here? She demanded. Enough to begin the great transformation, Sarnax replied. Enough to elevate the Council beyond mere survival to true dominance. The first explosion rocked the Citadel before Mara could respond. Not the EMP warheads, which were still minutes away, but something else. The security comm crackled with urgent reports. Colonel, the holding cells in the eastern wing, they're breaking out. Some kind of security failure. Chaos erupted in multiple sectors as the imprisoned diplomats, now awakened and aware of their situation, fought back against their captors. The distraction was exactly what Mara needed. "Major Cho, get Officer Lin. Everyone else, covering fire." As her team surged forward, the Zeroth moved with terrifying speed to intercept them. The creatures were incredibly strong, with exoskeletons that seemed to deflect standard weapons fire. But they weren't invulnerable. Concentrated plasma bursts at joint sections proved effective, as did shots to what appeared to be sensory organs clustered around their head regions. Mara fought her way toward the central platform, where Sarnax was frantically operating the machinery connected to Officer Lin. Blood, both human red and the luminescent substance of the Zeroth, splashed across the floor as the battle intensified. "Disconnect her now!" Mara shouted as she reached the platform, leveling her weapon at Sarnax's head. The Overseer turned, and for the first time, Mara saw genuine fear in those sunken eyes. "You don't understand," he said, voice cracking. "If the process is interrupted incorrectly, the backlash could kill her, could kill us all. The essence is volatile when agitated." "Then do it correctly," Mara replied, pressing the muzzle of her weapon against what she assumed was a vulnerable point in his biomechanical armor. "You have 10 seconds. Sarnax worked quickly, his many-jointed fingers dancing across the control surfaces. The tubes connected to Officer Lin detached one by one, the glowing fluid within them draining back into the machinery. As the last connection was severed, Lin gasped, her eyes flying open. "Colonel, they're using us to feed those things. Our blood, our DNA. They're harvesting genetic information, adaptive traits." "Save your strength," Mara said, helping her up while keeping Sarnax covered. "We're getting out of here." The second set of explosions came then, the EMP warheads detonating in sequence throughout the Citadel. Systems failed in cascading waves as the electromagnetic pulses fried delicate circuitry. Emergency lights flickered, then gave way to darkness before auxiliary power kicked in, bathing everything in a dim red glow. With the Citadel's primary systems disabled, the battle shifted. The Zeroth, seemingly disoriented by the EMPs, became even more aggressive, but less coordinated. They attacked anything that moved, including council members. Sarnax himself was nearly eviscerated by one of the creatures before Mara's team cut it down. "Your control systems," Mara said, realization dawning. "The Zeroth aren't allies. They're weapons you thought you could control." Sarnax, bleeding from multiple wounds, no longer bothered to deny it. "They promised us evolution," he gasped. "Strength beyond our natural limitations. And they delivered, but the price was your soul," Mara finished for him. "And now they're loose." The fighting intensified as they fought their way back toward the docking bay. The corridors of the once imposing Citadel had become a battleground, with Council security forces engaged in desperate combat against rampaging Zeroth. Mara's team moved through the chaos with military precision, collecting injured diplomats and staff as they went. Captain Drex's voice came through the static of the comm system. "Colonel, we're picking up massive energy fluctuations throughout the Citadel. Something's happening to the station's power core." "The containment fields," Mara realized. Sarnax mentioned containment fields before the EMP hit. What else are they keeping contained here? The answer came in the form of a bone-chilling howl that echoed through the entire structure. A sound no human throat could make, no Earth creature could emanate. It was followed by a tremor that shook the very foundations of the Citadel. "Whatever it is," Mara said grimly, "we don't want to meet it. All teams, full evacuation. Get to the shuttles now." They reached the docking bay to find it in chaos. Council ships were launching without coordination, some colliding with each other in their desperation to escape. The Zeroth had reached this area too, engaged in brutal combat with the remaining Council security forces. "Get aboard," Mara ordered, directing her people toward their shuttle. Wounded first, then support personnel. As the last of her team boarded, Mara turned to see Lord Sarnax staggering toward her, one arm hanging useless at his side, his biomechanical armor sparking and malfunctioning. "Colonel Whitlock," he called, his voice barely audible above the din of battle and escaping ships. "You must understand. We did what was necessary for survival. The Zeroth offered us advancement beyond mere existence. They showed us the path to true dominance." "And you believed them," Mara replied, disgust evident in her voice. "You sacrificed others for your own evolution." "As all species must," Sarnax insisted. "The strong survive by consuming the weak. It is the fundamental law of all Deathworlds." Another tremor shook the Citadel, stronger than before. Warning klaxons blared as structural integrity alerts flashed across the few functioning displays. "Perhaps," Mara said, backing toward her shuttle. "But humanity evolved differently. We survived by cooperation, not predation, by lifting each other up, not by using each other as stepping stones." She raised her weapon one last time. "The Deathworld Council is finished. Sarnax, whatever alliance you thought you had with these Zeroth creatures is over. And when the dust settles, humanity will be waiting to help rebuild. But on our terms this time." With that, she fired, not at Sarnax, but at the control panel for the emergency blast doors. As the massive barriers began to descend, separating the docking bay from the rest of the Citadel, she turned and ran for her shuttle. The journey back to the Vanguard was tense but mercifully brief. As they approached the fleet, Mara watched the tactical displays with growing concern. The Obsidian Citadel was showing signs of catastrophic failure, power surges, structural collapse, and what appeared to be internal explosions. "All ships accounted for, Colonel," reported Lieutenant Commander Reyes as they docked with the Vanguard. "All surviving diplomatic personnel recovered. Medical teams standing by." "What about the council ships?" Mara asked. "Scattered. Some appear to be heading for the outer colonies. Others toward their respective homeworlds. No coordinated response." Mara nodded grimly. "And the Citadel?" Captain Drex gestured toward the main view screen, where the once imposing fortress now displayed multiple breaches, with atmosphere venting into space. "Falling apart at the seams, Colonel. Whatever they were containing in there got loose when the EMPs hit the power grid." "Can we get any visual on what's happening inside?" "Long-range scanners are picking up movement," Drex replied, adjusting the display. "But it's chaotic." The magnified image showed shadowy forms moving within the breached sections of the Citadel. Some recognizably Zeroth, others so alien that they defied classification. They seemed to be fighting each other as much as they were destroying the station. "The Zeroth weren't the apex predators they claimed to be," Major Cho observed, studying the footage. "They were just another link in the chain, another species trying to leverage others for advancement." "And now the chain is broken," Mara said quietly. As they watched, a final, massive explosion tore through the central section of the Citadel. The obsidian structure that had seemed so impregnable just hours before now shattered like glass, fragments spinning off into the void. Among those fragments, dark shapes could be seen, escaping creatures, council survivors, and who knew what else. "Colonel," Communications Officer Walsh spoke up from his station. "We're receiving a transmission. It's on all frequencies, broadcasting to the entire sector." "Source?" Mara asked. "Unknown, but it's coming from the direction of the Citadel debris field." "Put it through." The transmission contained no video, only audio, and what they heard sent chills down Mara's spine. It was a cacophony of voices speaking in unison, some recognizably from council species, others entirely alien. The translation software struggled to keep up, rendering only fragments. "Liberation at hand. Evolution continues. The strong will find us. The worthy will join us. Blood calls to blood across the stars. Then silence, as the transmission abruptly cut off. "Orders, Colonel," Captain Drex asked, his expression grave. Mara took a moment to consider. The diplomatic mission had failed catastrophically, but they had uncovered something far more significant. A conspiracy that threatened not just humanity, but all spacefaring species. The Deathworld Council had been compromised, infiltrated by entities that viewed other sentient beings as mere resources to be harvested. "Set course for Earth," she finally said. "Maximum speed. We need to report directly to Unified Command." "And the Council survivors?" Drex pressed. "There are escape pods out there. Ships damaged in the chaos." Mara's expression hardened. "Scan for human biosignatures first. If any of our people are stranded out there, they're the priority. For the rest..." She paused, then continued with reluctant determination. "Offer assistance to any vessel in distress, but maintain quarantine protocols. No one comes aboard without full biohazard screening." As the fleet prepared to depart, Mara made her way to the medical bay, where the rescued diplomats were being treated. Dr. Elizabeth Werner, the Vanguard's chief medical officer, met her at the entrance. "How are they?" Mara asked without preamble. "Stable, for the most part," Dr. Werner replied. "Extensive blood loss, tissue sampling, and some evidence of experimental drug administration. But the real concern is this." She led Mara to a diagnostic display showing cellular scans of the recovered personnel. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss, until Werner zoomed in on a particular section. "These are nanoscale alterations to their cellular structures," the doctor explained. "Subtle changes to mitochondrial function, neurotransmitter production, immune response mechanisms. It's as if someone was optimizing them." "The Zeroth," Mara said. "Sarnak said they were interested in our adaptive capacity." "Well, they certainly left their mark," Werner said grimly. "These changes aren't immediately harmful. In fact, some might be considered beneficial in isolation, enhanced cellular repair, improved oxygen utilization, but the pattern suggests they were just getting started, mapping our biology for more extensive modifications." "Can you reverse it?" Werner's expression was troubled. "I don't know. This is beyond anything in our medical database. I've got the team working on it, but..." "Do what you can," Mara said, placing a hand on the doctor's shoulder. "And keep them in isolation until we're certain there's no risk of contamination." The unspoken fear hung between them. What if the changes were contagious? What if this was just the first stage of some insidious transformation process? As Mara left the medical bay, her tactical officer intercepted her with a data tablet. "Colonel, preliminary analysis of the information we downloaded from the Citadel systems. You'll want to see this immediately." The data painted a disturbing picture. The Zeroth had appeared at the fringes of Council space approximately 1 standard year ago, presenting themselves as evolutionary paragons from beyond known space. They had offered the Council species ascension through biological enhancement, a tempting proposition for cultures that already valued evolutionary fitness above all else. But the Zeroth were not what they claimed. The deeper files, encrypted and hidden from most Council members, revealed that they were actually a bioengineered weapon created by an unknown civilization. Living tools designed to harvest beneficial traits from other species and incorporate them into their own biology. They were not natural evolvers, but artificial amalgamators, collecting and combining the best adaptations from every world they encountered. And humanity, with its remarkable adaptability and neural complexity, had become their prime target. "They were farming us," Mara said quietly, scrolling through the data. "Using the diplomatic missions as cover to sample human biology. Not just us," Lieutenant Commander Reyes pointed out. "Look at these records. Dozens of species, hundreds of specimens. The Council was complicit in creating a biological database of every spacefaring civilization they could access. The implications were staggering. If the Zeroth had succeeded, if they had fully incorporated human adaptive traits into their already formidable biology, they would have become nearly unstoppable predators, capable of adapting to any environment, any weapon, any defense. And now they're loose, Mara said, voicing the fear that gripped them all. Whatever escaped from that citadel is carrying knowledge of human biology, our strengths, our weaknesses. So what do we do? Reyes asked. Mara's expression hardened with resolve. We prepare. We warn every allied world about what happened here. We develop new protocols for biological security, and we hunt down every last one of these Zeroth before they can perfect their evolution. 3 days later, the interstellar strike fleet arrived at Earth, bearing wounds, survivors, and a warning that would reshape humanity's approach to interstellar relations forever. The diplomatic incident became known as the Blood Hall Crisis, a name that would enter history books as the moment when humanity discovered the true nature of the cosmos. Not a place of peaceful exchange and mutual respect, as they had hoped. Not even a straightforward battlefield with clear enemies, as they had feared. But something far more complex and terrifying. A biological arms race on a galactic scale, where evolution itself had become weaponized. In the aftermath, as Unified Command absorbed the full implications of what had transpired, Colonel Mara Whitlock stood before the Security Council to deliver her final assessment. The Deathworld Council as we knew it is shattered, she told them. Lord Sarnax and his inner circle betrayed not only us, but their own member species. They believed they could control the Zeroth, use them as tools for their own advancement. They were wrong. She activated a holographic display, showing the scattered remnants of the Obsidian Citadel. Now, a debris field orbiting the system's star. But this is not the end of the threat, she continued. The Zeroth escaped. How many? We don't know. They carry with them knowledge of human biology, and the biology of dozens of other species. They will continue their evolutionary mission, wherever they go. And the survivors of the Council? Asked Admiral Chen, leaning forward with concern. Can we expect retaliation? Unlikely, at least in the short term, Mara replied. The faction that orchestrated this conspiracy has been decimated. The remaining Council members are scattered, their power structure in disarray. Many of them were victims as much as we were, used as test subjects before the Zeroth turned their attention to humanity. So what are you proposing, Colonel? The question came from the Secretary General herself, her expression grave. Mara took a deep breath. A new approach to interstellar relations, one based not on naive trust or paranoid isolation, but on clear-eyed vigilance. We extend aid to the Council survivors who were not complicit in the conspiracy. There are many who would welcome alliance with humanity now, seeing us as the force that exposed the Zeroth deception. She brought up another display, star charts marking confirmed Zeroth sightings since the Citadel's destruction. At the same time, we initiate Project Sentinel, a combined military and scientific initiative to track, study, and ultimately neutralize the Zeroth threat. They've seen our biology. They know our potential. They will be back. The debate that followed was intense, with arguments for isolation, preemptive strikes, and various diplomatic approaches all presented with passionate conviction. But in the end, Mara's recommendation prevailed. Humanity would not retreat from the stars, nor would it charge blindly ahead. It would proceed with caution, strength, and a new understanding of the biological complexities that defined interspecies relations. 1 month later, a new flag was raised on the reconstructed docking bay of what remained of the Obsidian Citadel, now repurposed as Sentinel Station Alpha, the first outpost of humanity's new interstellar security network. The flag bore the emblem of Earth's unified command, but with a new motto beneath it. Through blood we learn, through vigilance we endure. Colonel Mara Whitlock stood on the observation deck, watching as ships from former Council worlds docked alongside human vessels. The alliance was fragile, born of shared trauma rather than natural affinity. But it was a beginning. "Quite a view," said Major Reina Cho, joining her at the viewport. "Hard to believe it's been only a month since we first arrived here." "With blood on our ships," Mara added quietly. "Yes," Cho acknowledged, though not in the way the Zeroth intended. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the activity in the docking bay. Engineers from 3 different species worked together to repair a damaged section of the station. Medical personnel exchanged information on biological defense mechanisms. Security teams ran joint drills, learning each other's strengths and weaknesses. "The blood samples we recovered from the Citadel's laboratories," Mara said finally. "What have we learned?" Cho's expression turned serious. "The analysis is ongoing, but it's concerning. The Zeroth weren't just taking our blood for its raw materials. They were studying our entire genetic and biochemical makeup, learning how we adapt, how we heal, how we evolve. And they were beginning to incorporate those traits into their own biology. Creating a super predator," Mara said. "Essentially, yes. A being with humanity's adaptability and cognitive flexibility, combined with the physical resilience of multiple Deathworld species." Cho hesitated, then continued. "But there's something else. Something in the deepest encrypted files we recovered." "Go on." "The Zeroth themselves weren't natural evolvers. They were designed, bioengineered weapons created for some unknown purpose. And whoever made them is still out there, somewhere beyond the mapped regions of space. The implication hung in the air between them. If the Zeroth were merely weapons, what kind of beings had created them? And what were their intentions toward the rest of the galaxy? "One crisis at a time, Major," Mara said, though the concern was evident in her voice. "First, we contain the immediate threat. Then, we prepare for whatever comes next." As if in response to her words, an alert sounded from the command center. A lieutenant approached with a data tablet. "Colonel, we've detected unusual energy signatures in the Proxima sector. Pattern matches what we observed during the Citadel's collapse." Mara exchanged a glance with Cho. "The Zeroth?" "Possibly," the lieutenant replied. "Or something worse." Mara straightened her uniform. Decision already made. "Prepare the Vanguard for immediate departure. Alert the Alliance vessels to stand ready." As she strode toward the command center, purpose in every step, Mara reflected on how quickly everything had changed. 1 month ago, humanity had approached the Deathworld Council as supplicants, eager to prove their worthiness for inclusion in the interstellar community. Now, they stood as leaders of a new coalition, forged in crisis, tempered by betrayal, but driven by a shared determination to survive. The blood that had stained their ships upon arrival had become a symbol not of victimhood, but of resilience. Whatever waited for them in the Proxima sector, whatever challenges lay ahead in this new era of biological warfare and evolutionary competition, humanity would face it with open eyes and steeled resolve. The Deathworlds had taught their inhabitants to value strength above all else. Humanity would show them a different kind of strength, not the brutal power of predator over prey, but the enduring might of cooperation, innovation, and unwavering principle. And if the creators of the Zeroth were watching from the shadows, planning their next move in this cosmic game of evolutionary chess, they would soon learn what the Deathworld Council had discovered too late. Humanity might have evolved on a gentle world, but they were far from gentle when threatened. Their blood, so coveted by the Zeroth, carried within it not just the capacity for adaptation, but the indomitable will to protect their own, and now, to protect all who stood with them against the darkness beyond the stars. As the Vanguard's engines flared to life, carrying them toward yet another confrontation with the unknown, Mara Whitlock made a silent promise to herself and to the crews under her command. This time, they would not arrive with blood on their ships. They would arrive with purpose in their hearts and fire in their eyes, ready not just to survive this new reality, but to shape it. Ready to prove that in the grand evolutionary tournament of the cosmos, cooperation could be as powerful a strategy as predation. Ready to show the galaxy that humanity had arrived, not as specimens to be harvested, but as a force to be reckoned with. A force that understood, finally and fully, the true price of peace among the stars.